Junji Ito, a manga artist and writer who originally back in the 90s was relatively underground, even doing manga on the side, but now he's considered one of the great horror writers out there, famous for making some of the most unsettling manga with some deep meaning behind them. However, when it comes to adapting, they can be hit or miss. In 2018, there was an anthology series based off of some of his shorter works, and it had its moments, but was overall kind of a mess. In the 2000s, there was a film series based off his Tomy stories, and most of those worked really well because of how grounded the stories were. But there's one adaptation that's rarely mentioned. Uzumaki. The 2000s movie based off the manga. Uzumaki is considered one of his best. The story of a small town that gets a number of strange instances involving spirals. Most people say if you're going to start with Junji Ito, start with this. But not this. Like I said, this is a film I rarely see brought up when talking about Junji Ito. I could never really find a straight answer other than it's not good. I can't even get a straight answer on the production. Wikipedia says the film is produced by Omega Mikot, that also apparently released it in San Francisco, but when I click the citation it just redirects to a Variety review from 2000. The movie's written by Tako Nita, who also wrote other things, I think, and then just stopped in 2005. And the director is Hugashinsky, which is not a real name, but I couldn't find a translation. Including this movie, he only directed 3 other things. One being a TV movie, and the other, from what I read, just sounds like a Battle Royale knockoff. For those who have seen it, I don't care to. Also keep in mind, outside of a short film, Uzumaki is his first movie, and it kinda shows, because this movie is really weird. It's more weird than scary, which is a little disappointing because I had some hope for this. In the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a big boost in Japanese horror movies before they all got American remakes. In fact, this is the same production company who did Audition and the Tomy movies. So this film coming out at the same time as all these other good movies, I thought it would go in nicely with the crowd. It does not. It goes in jilted. It's strange. It's all over the place, yet doesn't go anywhere. It has uncanny filming, confusing acting. It's just weird. And I don't know where to start. I think you understand the tone just by the first minute or so. Yeah, eldritch horror at its finest. Here's Junji Ito cameo. Real subtle. Oh yeah, these are the characters, Kira and Sato. Kira, I admit, looks pretty accurate, but what's going on with Sato? It looks like he straightened out his mullet. Throughout the movie, there are little cutaways to help build atmosphere, and every now and then there'll be something unusual to build the idea that the town is going crazy. Some of them aren't bad, like the little spirals in the clouds. It's bad CGI, and compared to the manga, it's pathetic, but I get it. But most of these just come off as... yeah, most of these just come in and just happen. It's almost kind of funny. But when the movie tries to be funny... what is this? This whole scene is in center frame, with characters just staring. What is this? What are they trying to say? She just buys a watermelon and we never see the guy again. What the hell? Also, Kiria doesn't act like her character. In the manga, she was serious, and here she's... yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that's a transition. Subtle as Austin Powers. Now, this scene with the dad of the pottery being shown off is really well. The movie does have some good scenes, and this is one of them. The quick editing, the close-ups to help show off how insane the guy is, and the fade is pretty cool. I even like how they use the digital cameras. That's some zoom in and close-ups used well. Uzumaki toいうものに何やら神秘的なものを感じるんですよ. And then slap we're happy. Yeah, get used to that. It's not the last. In the manga, Kirito had a mother and younger brother, but in here her mother's dead and there doesn't seem to be a younger brother. Just looking at my own baby pictures because that's what all teenagers do. Also, again, a really weird transition.
You know, just because you can edit doesn't mean you should.
Not only is this flashback pointless, but it looks like they're developing a relationship that was barely in the manga. They weren't childhood friends, they were just two people caught up in the horror and trying to survive. I do appreciate the idea of how some of this is filmed. Like here, where they're just walking and normally and everyone's just standing still. It's kind of brave directing. I even like the part where Miyazaki kills himself. It's shot really well. The problem is it doesn't hold this up. It's followed up by...
幸せだったのよ。
Now, Heather, it's Heather's turn.
他人から注目されるってすごく幸せなことじゃない？ねえ。
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
Maybe this was supposed to be a comedy. She just burns out the cigarette and it fucking explodes. And no, this was not in the manga. This is how I can sum up this movie. It's a bunch of ideas and then it gets too ambitious. I don't know if this was the peak of weird Japanese art, but again, it's also the peak of Japanese horror. Really good horror movies that were serious and experimental. This movie can be experimental, but not serious.
Uzumaki da.
え？渦巻き？
Was a direct result of your incompetence!
The movie can be summed up with its good, well-shot scenes and then silliness. It's almost a pattern, like a spiral. I feel like I'm watching ASMR. There's clearly talent with filming and framing, but there's no real direction. Like, literally, I don't think anyone knows what they were doing. The director said he wanted to make a film like Star Wars, but realized that, quote, because I'm Japanese, I should do something different. What? I don't even have a movie clip. This is just dumb. In terms of how accurate it is to the manga, it kind of is. It adapts parts and scenes, but they don't really connect together. The manga was sort of an anthology with stories beginning and ending, but here they try to connect them while still just ending. Originally it was gonna be an anthology film, but the director sought against it for some reason. Also, not to nitpick, but all the stories they adapt are from the ones I don't like.
皿持って行ってもらえないかな。
え？
ってなんだ。
You know, watching this scene play out really reminds me of Tokyo Story and how a lot of things in there were just center framed. But in there, it was a good reason for that. The film's in 4:3, they live in a small house, it's meant to invoke Japanese minimalism. In here, I can see it being used for creepiness, but they use it for more than just that. It's confusing.
びっくりした？
え？
びっくりしたみたいだね。
当たり前でしょ。
怒ったのかい？びっくりさせるのは僕の趣味なんだ。
ああ、そうですか。
Again, there are some well-made shots that do invoke that creepiness, but final punchline is usually this. No, not that. That. To be fair, this is one of the more important storylines, so it feels a little necessary, but it's just unfortunate. When most of the story is kind of original from the manga, they just take the events and just kind of run into them. On paper, this works to make the story more linear. The problem is everything in between. Like how they just show her cutting off her fingerprints instead of developing why she's doing that. Also in the manga, we saw her doing it, so it's a little disappointing. What's with the sped up GIF? Weirdly enough, I think the second half is better than the first half. It takes itself more seriously with less gags and slower pacing, and most of the characters start to act like their manga counterparts. I can appreciate some of the experimental directing now. It's still not perfect, some ideas don't mesh well. Like when they adapt the swirling hair girl, it looks like she's just wearing fruit roll-ups. Like how the shot just randomly spins. If the previous shot spun too, it would work, but it just starts halfway. The rest of the video could just be me showing off all the weird and unintentionally funny shots.
Mecca like a high, Mecca hiney ho.
But like I said, that starts to run dry by the second half. I won't spoil it, but since the manga was still ongoing at the time, it doesn't end on a storyline. It just feels abrupt and unfinished. Like, shit just gets weird and then it just ends. Kinda glad though, I don't think it could handle the manga's finale. Final conclusion, I think the lesson to take away is less is more. The small moments of cinematography are the best part, but when it tries to do too much, it's just too much. Some moments are more uncanny and others funny. It has elements of manga, but also of 2000s soap opera. It's in that weird line where it's too accurate to the manga and not enough. Apparently it was a double feature with the Tomy sequel, so it didn't have a high budget. But even with it, I'm not sure it would work. Uzumaki is a story of a normal town slowly going insane. This movie was already insane from the beginning. It feels like there were two different directors. Like I said, the slow parts were good, but then the punchline just ruins it. I would only recommend it if you read the manga and are curious, or just want to laugh at weird shit. The good news is that there's a new adaptation in the works, completely animated, produced by Production IG and Adult Swim. Yeah, they have an iffy track record, but I'm optimistic. It looks promising, and hey, it's at least gotta be better than this. Whatever, go watch something like Cure.